I solve crimes for a living. Let me show you what that actually means. I was 10 years old when cops cuffed my neighbor, and I finally understood the world was split in two. Every night my father came home, locked his gun away, and said nothing. I memorized every single move. While every other kid was outside playing, I was inside studying how investigators read a crime scene. My teacher couldn't explain where the law ends and real justice begins. That silence shaped who I became. 300 people sat that exam. I had already decided before walking in that first place was mine. First day, they demanded blind obedience. I gave them something they couldn't train out of me: discipline. The bell rang, and I heard every second of it. I kept going anyway. The field never rings before it kills you. Real surveillance means becoming invisible, reading silence, learning patterns, dissolving into the dark. Everyone in that hall applauded my name. I was already thinking about what the next morning would require. She answered every hard question without flinching once. In 20 years of interviews, that almost never happens. She said yes, and I swore I'd come home every night. I broke that particular promise within the first month. First case: one mid-level dealer with 3 prior arrests. My partner called it easy. Nothing ever is easy. 7 nights in that parked car with cold coffee taught me more about patience than any academy ever did. I built every piece of that case alone, from nothing, and handed it over without putting my name on anything. The cameras filmed the arrest for 30 minutes straight. I was already back at my desk before they left. He pushed the file toward me and said my name was the only one he trusted. I opened it without hesitating. 40 names across 12 cities tied by one invisible thread. I pinned every connection until it made sense. That man walked into danger every single day to get me that list. A handshake in a garage wasn't enough. Her plate was already empty when I walked in. We sat across from each other and neither of us spoke once. 4 pounds placed into my arms and every case I had ever worked suddenly meant absolutely nothing at all. The phone rang 4 times on the table right beside me. I watched it buzz and chose to stay on the floor. I placed one photograph face up on the table between us and waited. 4 minutes of silence broke him completely. One missing timestamp erased 3 full months of documented work overnight. The system swallowed itself whole. No warrant, no authorization. Just a man who needed watching and a legal process far too slow to matter. I entered without permission and pocketed what I found inside. Illegal by definition. Necessary by every measure. He shouted across that desk for 6 solid minutes. The case was already filed. His anger resolved absolutely nothing. Someone had photographed my wife and daughter on their daily route and left the prints under my front door. I packed her bags and told her it was temporary. She looked at me and we both understood I was lying completely. My daughter waved from the rear window until the car turned the corner. I stayed on that sidewalk much longer. I stopped returning to the apartment. The office became the only address. The case became the only reality. The voice said stop or my family would cease to exist. I wrote down every single word and then kept going. I parked outside and watched the light in the window. They were safe inside. That was enough for that night. One folded address passed beneath a cafe table represented every sleepless night I had spent during that year. 9 people in custody within 11 minutes. I had walked every room of that building 100 times mentally. Stamp on the file. Case officially closed. One uncircled name in my private notebook said otherwise entirely. My colleague read the address over the radio, and I recognized every single word before the sentence ended. 4 officers moved to stop me at the perimeter tape. They saw my face and stepped back without one word. 20 years of trained emotional control became completely worthless the moment I stepped through that door. 4 victims. Identical method at every scene. 8 months of active investigation and still no real lead. I took everything I felt and compressed it into fuel, and burned that fuel sitting alone at my desk all night. He said the word personal like it was a disqualification. He was right. I left the badge and kept everything else. No credentials means no official access. It also means finding the channels that don't require credentials at all. They left me bleeding in that alley to send a message. I stood up and read it as a sign I was getting close. The same unregistered number appeared at 4 crime scenes across 4 separate months. That was my only lead. 200 kilometers of dark highway with no jurisdiction, no backup, and absolutely no intention of stopping. 4 different neighbors, 4 identical descriptions. Quiet, polite, kept to himself. I had read that file before. His wall was covered in surveillance photos of my family taken over weeks. We were never random, we were chosen. He filled 40 pages describing each killing with the calm detachment of someone logging daily temperature readings. Same market, same stall, same bread every single Tuesday without fail. Every killer has one habit that ends them. Eye contact across the crowded market lasted exactly 1 second. We both understood, and we both started running. My legs were done by block 4, and my lungs were on fire. My mind had already closed the distance between us. He ran into a dead end, turned around, and looked directly at me with absolutely no fear in his expression. He stopped moving, and I stood over him in the dark, thinking about every single thing that he had taken from me. The forest held no sound except my own slow breathing and the steady rhythm of the shovel meeting cold earth. The city looked clean and quiet from up on that hill at dawn. I called her anyway. She answered on the first ring.